What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a brand new show here on the Geekiverse. Star Wars reviewed. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo! Star Wars superfans only, plus Tim Talbot. I'm Josiah Leroy. Just kidding, Tim. We've got a new show here, if you can't tell. I'm really excited about this. It's been a long time coming.
Couldn't wait,
Could not wait. I have so many of those gadgets throughout what is going to be a series here, so buckle up, boys. This is going to be a lot of fun. Star Wars reviewed. Today we're starting with the first ever Star Wars film, 1977, when it was just called Star Wars. But Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. So we're going to go in movie release order. As you can tell, John's got the beautiful Steelbook edition right there. I'm Josiah, crazy Star Wars fan. With me today, right-hand man, Mr. Baba Yaga, Disruptoid. John, you ready to talk some Star Wars?
I always appreciate a good insert art. I like if I open up your seal book or your case and there's something special in there, bonus points. That's super cool. Like a video, especially one that like a non-special edition. You open up just like a standard video game and boom, all of a sudden there's something cool in there. I appreciate that. Yes, I'm excited to talk Star Wars, man. We've been talking about this. We've been wanting to get to this show for so long. We started the MCU reviewed. It's still going strong. They just keep making those Marvel movies, turns out. So that's going to be going for a while. But we've just had the itch to take that formula and just apply it to Star Wars because we love Star Wars. And we're here. We made it.
We couldn't wait any longer. It was just too much to bear, really. We had the MCU reviewed, and we've been a little inconsistent with it. We'll get better. We'll try. And I was always of the mind that we had to finish that to the best of our ability before starting Star Wars. But then John was like, we really don't have to do that. And I was like, what? And it just blew my mind. And here we are starting a new year with a new series. So good stuff there. Also with us, really excited about the perspective we're going to hear tonight on this. T2, Tim Talbot. Tim, are you excited to talk Star Wars?
I am very excited. So a little while back, I kind of lost my love for Star Wars. Not that I didn't want to watch it anymore, but I fell off the wagon. And big reason is because I loved, the first 3 movies in release order. The next 3 I liked as well. And then when the new movies came out, I don't think I had enough Star Wars content to keep me involved. And what really got me back into wanting to watch Star Wars again was Fallen Order. When I played the game, I was like, this is it. I'm back. So shortly after playing that, I started rewatching all the movies again. And, I think you guys know this, but I haven't watched the last movie yet.
That's going to be
I wanted to rewatch all
episode.
The other ones first. So that's kind of, I started, didn't finish watching them all, and now I'm going to start all over again. So excited. Very
excited. I'm really excited, especially when we get to that one, because it's so polarizing for, a number of reasons. So Star Wars talk, this is going to be the norm, as it really has been for a lot of the Geekiverse's existence. I think I've been waiting for this series to happen since the Geekiverse started almost 8 years ago now, which is crazy. But got the Star Wars glass there if you're watching at youtube.com/the Geekiverse or listening on podcast services around the globe. All right, we're going to intro this one with our where did our love of Star Wars truly stem from? Take us back to that first experience, whether it was when we were younger or really all not that long ago. Let's talk about it. I am going to try to not be as extensive as I could be. But John, why don't we kick it off with you? Where did your love of Star Wars begin?
Wow, that was cool. That was way cooler on camera than I expected it to. I have a very interesting history with Star Wars. So obviously, I'm not old enough to have seen the original trilogy in theaters or even be I couldn't call myself a fan of them growing up. I didn't have a lot of Star Wars. Hold on. In the household growing up as a kid. And then obviously I was the perfect age for the prequels when they came out, but I never really got too into the hype other than just playing with the toys and stuff with my friends. I never saw those movies until they came out on home video. So I wasn't in the theaters going to see Phantom Menace, any of it. So I really didn't get into Star Wars until the Disney purchase. So I was always a fake fan, basically. I knew they would come on FX or whatever, and I'd be watching them in the background and stuff like that. And I knew most of the characters. I was a fake Star Wars fan. And then when the Disney purchase happened, I'm like, okay, we're getting new Star Wars stuff. This is a great time to jump in. And that's when I jumped in. I watched the original 6 films and absolutely fell in love with it. And then Episode 7 comes out, and I'm just all in. I like the Star Wars hype was real, and it's almost like I was experiencing secondhand nostalgia. Even though I didn't grow up with the movies as a little kid and definitely didn't see them in theaters, to see Episode 7 be basically a spiritual reboot of A New Hope and in the series in general, I was just experiencing experiencing secondhand nostalgia like through that film, and it just set me down a path. I'm like Star Wars obsessed now. Like play the games, read all the books. Like I'm like right in the middle of the newest High Republic book right now. Watch Clone Wars, Rebels, everything like that. So I'm all in now, but it took me a while.
John, I did not know that about you. I assumed yours was your path
birth.
Was at birth. No, a little bit more similar to mine. But
That's for Joe's at birth.
just about.
Where's my lightsaber?
I knew almost immediately. I went from Thomas the Tank Engine to Star Wars pretty quickly.
Yep.
Tim, why don't you share your experience?
So mine is actually funny, but it's the opposite of John. So I grew up with Star Wars. So I remember when I was a kid, my uncle had the Star Wars movies and he brought them over. You know, I watched them and I was probably 7, 8 at the time. Did not understand what was going on. But I loved the concept. I loved the movies. And then, you know, I watched them over and over and over. And, you know, I really loved them. But then it was just so long since I saw a lot of the originals. I kind of, like I said, fell off the wagon. I grew up playing all the video games, like for Nintendo and Super Nintendo, like a lot of that stuff. I remember playing, I think we talked about it. There's a game on PlayStation I played. It's like first person, kind of like a Doom style, but I was obsessed. And, you know what I'm
Dark
talking
Forces?
about? Yes. So,
Yeah.
And I was obsessed. And then I don't think I had enough Star Wars content anymore. So it just kind of became one of those things where I loved watching, you know, the first 3 movies that came out. And I never really dived into the prequel movies. And it was just like one of those things. I just have watched the first 3 movies so many times. And I'm really excited to kind of really watch them because I never actually sat down and just watched all 6 movies in a row. So, you know, it's usually been a movie here, a movie there, a movie here. So it'll be nice to kind of do that, you know, kind of like I'm doing with Marvel right now. I know we've talked a little about the MCU stuff, but I'm excited, you know, a little bit different for me than for John. And, you know, like I said, I played Fallen Order. I watched the 2 movies that just came out recently where they
Force Awakens and Last Jedi.
Right.
Yep. So I watched those 2, loved them, and really got me back into it. So I'm excited to rewatch them all again.
Yeah, my biggest thing was I didn't have that family member around the house that liked Star Wars. My parents had zero interest. I didn't have that cousin. My older brother failed me. He's 4 years older than me. He should have been into Star Wars. He should have gotten me into that. But Star Wars was still right. But Star Wars was still a part of my childhood. Like I had friends who were into it, and just like by proxy, I knew everything about Star Wars in terms of like, you know, what a little kid could. I even had Star Wars toys. I think I told this the last time we had a Star Wars podcast. I had a Phantom Menace themed birthday party, and I didn't even see the movie. I just like Darth Maul was so cool to me, and I didn't even see it. I'm just like, oh, that guy's awesome. He's super scary. He's got red face paint. Like, so Star Wars was a big part of my childhood, as much as it could be as a kid who just liked the idea of it, you know?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I like both of those perspectives there. Got a little bit unique on each of those. For me, the year is 1997. So yeah, born in 1990, and obviously, you know, long after the originals in the theaters. And I would have been about 6 years old at the time, because it was spring, and the special editions were basically coming to theaters for a limited release. Just 2 years prior to the Phantom Menace Episode 1 coming out, to kind of build hype around that, to get everyone's juices flowing again. I don't remember really ever having any sort of interest or care about it until my dad said, "Hey, if would you want to go to the movies and see something called Star Wars?" And he kind of told me a little bit about it, and I was like, "Yeah, that sounds good." So he took me to the Galleria Mall. I don't even remember what the movie theater was called at the time. This is well before Regal. Yeah. I don't know if it was AMC.
I don't know what it was, but I recall that theater. I can picture like the escalator going down to that theater.
The big glass wall that you could kind of like walk up to, like all of it. It different layout than what you see now if you're in Western New York.
Yeah, for sure. Different part of the mall entirely. It was by the food court where it is now.
It was.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to think of. But I go with my dad. I didn't know we were going to the movies that day, and we take a trip over there, and he goes, 2 tickets to Star Wars. So we went in, saw A New Hope, and from that moment on, I don't have a recollection of almost my life before Star Wars. It was just like from then on, I was obsessed. Just the second we sat down in the theater. And it's funny, like I think of another big movie franchise that I really, really love. Like it's on my short list for just favorite ever. It's Lord of the Rings trilogy, the original. And I did not love that at first. Like I saw the first movie and I was like, I don't think this is for me. I ended up seeing the second one with my dad, and I kind of got there, and then I became obsessed. Star Wars, it was lights out right away, and I've kind of never looked back. So, John, to your point, you didn't have any siblings that or cousins that got you there. I had a bunch of male cousins that were really just a few years older than me who were obsessed. So that helped as well when I got there. And to this day are kind of in the same boat. But I've got some crazy. I'm gonna pull a segment over from Busy Sticks. If you haven't checked out our show, Busy Sticks Show and Tell, got some crazy stuff here. If you're watching the YouTube version, so the original Star Wars, this is this would have came out on VHS in 1992, but totally unedited original version. Kind of cool.
Put it right in front of your face, just because the way I have you framed. Yeah, there you go. You can put it up to the camera, but like just center it because you're.
Can we get the steel copy both up at the same time to see the difference?
Oh yeah. So this is actually the back cover of that, but it's the same general poster.
Yeah,
crazy.
Yeah,
kind of iconic pose right there.
Yeah.
This one is 1995, so they released the trilogy, and George Lucas says on the back of the box, "This is the last time you're going to see the unedited original version." We know, George. You stop it right now. DVD release. So this is right before Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith comes out, 2005. This is 2004. This is the original 3 movies there. This one is a limited edition DVD. It contains the special edition and the original unedited version. So I've got a few of these here. Almost done, boys. This one's interesting. This is the first time it was on Blu-ray. So this is 2011 or 2012. It's got, at the time, all 6 movies. I always
love that art.
Ooh.
I used to walk by Best Buy and always see that on the shelf. I love that box art. It's so cool. Oh, I never opened it.
Got some really cool stuff on the inside.
Oh.
Just from concept art for the films. This one is not concept art. That's basically ripped right out of A New Hope.
Right.
So that is pretty cool. And then got John's Steelbook. Those were limited edition Blu-rays. And the newest one. This was a Christmas gift basically to myself.
You did it?
The collection. I did it. The 4K,
Ooh.
The Rise of Skywalker, all the way back to Phantom Menace. We've got the 9 movies there. Came with the digital 4K versions of all of those. Man, I watched this came in the mail today. I watched
timely
a little bit, just a little bit of A New Hope. And oh my goodness.
Crispy.
It is beautiful.
So that's just the 9 films that doesn't have Rogue One and Solo. Worth mentioning, we are doing that in our review, right?
Oh, I loved Rogue One.
So we're doing all 11 films, including Rogue One and Solo, in release order, just for y'all at home want to play along.
Yes, absolutely. Moving on, box office. We did this in MCU Reviewed. We're going to keep a lot of the same format from that show if you've seen that before. We're going to talk about box office numbers here just briefly. What's different here versus MCU is that Star Wars gets re-released a lot. Even if they don't update the movie, it comes back to theaters every few years, it feels like.
Also, worth noting in 1977,
25 less movies.
There are much less movies, but also tickets back then, like 25 cents. Not comparable. Yeah. Just flip the guy a nickel and you're in to see the film. That's how it worked back then.
Crazy. So we have the original release, 1977, May 25th. We had a 1982 re-release, the 97 special edition, the one I referenced that I saw. We had a Star Wars May the 4th marathon. I don't know what year that took place. And then there was, despite the pandemic, 2020 re-release. Did not do very much because not a lot of theaters were open, not a lot of people were going. But they did play it even locally in Buffalo. I did not go myself. All of those combined, $775 million.
Do you have a breakdown for the original? Do you have just the first run? Because I'd be curious to see what it made in comparison to its budget, which was $11 million, which is insane for a movie back in 1977. $11 million, I think, is like stupid.
I don't have those numbers.
No worries.
I'll get them next time, but it did pretty well.
Yeah. So and 71 overall, 75?
775.
Yeah, 775. Yeah, that's up there. That's up there.
Pretty good, right?
Yeah.
So I think about like this movie and how it really spawned on so many things and inspired so many things in different movies and bits of media. It just created this big part of pop culture that we have to be thankful for. Like, the Geekiverse is not here if Star Wars doesn't exist, because this is what pulls me into all of it. The world of video games, eventually the MCU, Lord of the Rings, TV shows, comics, even to a degree. This is game changing for the world, and what a phenomenon it would have been back then. It's an exciting thing to kind of go back and see some of those documentaries, because we were not around, and just to hear about what the hype really was. Do you guys go ahead.
I was just going to kind of piggyback off of that. What blows my mind is how the pop culture influence and domination never stopped. Even from after Revenge of the Sith and before the Disney purchase, there was no Star Wars content for what, 10 years plus at that point, right? You would still walk into a JCPenney's and you'd see 3 different Star Wars shirts. You'd go into an FYE and there's Star Wars posters. Like, the pop culture domination never let up. It's just incredible how it's just from 77 has just been ingrained in pop culture.
I feel like it was ahead of its time.
That. Oh, absolutely.
In my opinion. Like,
no
even
doubt.
Rewatching it, it was like,
it
was still so good. And I just feel like there's a lot of things they did well when they released the movie, in the sense of like, there's a lot of like contrasting colors, and it just was it was like the fact that stormtroopers are white and then Darth Vader's black. Like, it just pops out so much when you watch the movie. Like, everything just looks so nice. And, I just think it was very well done for being done in 1977. You know what I mean? So the fact that we watched it as a re-release in 1997 and it was like amazing. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
The fact that it came out, 20 years prior? So
yeah. Even now, I think of course it's been touched up, right, with the re-releases, but
right.
It naturally looks pretty good. And it's a lot better even than some movies still now today that appear on the big screen, which is saying a lot.
It had the benefit of being pretty pre-CGI, so there's not a lot of bad CGI in it. So, I mean, Spider-Man's fresh in the mind for a lot of us. You go back and watch that original Spider-Man movie from 01, or it was 01, I think, or 2000, whatever, 2002, got it. That CGI looks terrible. Like, everything looks rubbery. There's a lot of really, really off-putting CGI. In Star Wars, almost everything was practical. So, like, yeah, you can tell that they're using miniature models, but it doesn't look fake. That looks like an actual tangible thing, and it's just like, oh man, just to think of, like, when I know we're like hopping around, whatever. This is Star Wars. We're gonna go for a while here, right. But you just like walk into the cantina scene and just see all those different creatures, and you think, okay, that one's animatronic, and that one is someone in a costume. That dude's wearing makeup. Like, all of the prosthetics and all of the time and craftsmanship that went into just like one scene like that. It's just, man, so crazy.
It really works. It's like, I've got it in my notes here for later on that you could really tell a lot of what was added for the 97 special edition without even looking very hard. You're just like, oh, that doesn't seem like it fits very well.
It's a bummer.
Like, it's out of place.
I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm watching on Disney Plus. I'm like, man, this is rough. When they're driving to Mos Eisley, right? And just all the added creatures and stormtroopers falling off or whatever. It's just, man, why did you do terrible.
Did you ever see it was a fan made this. It was a joke trailer right after Force Awakens trailer dropped. And they're like, if George Lucas was in charge of this, and it just was all like these stupid added effects like from A New Hope that they threw into Force Awakens.
Oh, no.
So Finn like jumps up in the trailer, if you remember early on, from Jakku. And then he's just like staring out, like trying to catch his breath. And then it shows like one of the creatures slowly walking in front of the camera.
On the sand. Oh my God.
Like when Rey is, or BB-8 is running, they show like a dewback that's painted in the background. It's awesome because it's so accurate.
And it's
we'll
funny
have to pull that one.
That's part of it's part of the story of Star Wars too. It's like, it's part of the culture, and it's part of like what makes these so fun to talk about, because you have this guy in George Lucas who expertly crafted that film, but still made decisions like this in 1997. And we're like, dude, like, what is going on? And we see some of that carry over into the prequels. Obviously, we'll get to that when we talk about those films. But like, there's just so much to talk about with Star Wars, whether it's good or bad. And I think most of us will say that from our opinion, most of it's good. So we're gonna have a lot of fun on this show. There's some fun stuff to nitpick.
Yeah, there really is. And that is part of the fun for sure. So if you guys want to kind of cue up the trailer, I know we had on our list to talk about our first viewing. I kind of did that and talking about my experience with my dad there. Did you guys want to add anything from what we talked about already?
Yeah, all I can say is that like I definitely seen Star Wars: A New Hope like just sitting around as a kid, and like I said, it's like on not HBO or just whatever, whatever network television. I remember seeing like all the iconic scenes, and like I've certainly seen it, but the first time I can remember sitting down and watching that movie was after the Disney announcement. I'm like, okay, I'm doing this. I'm gonna get into Star Wars, and I remember just sitting like in my room. I think it was a winter break, and I was just like, I'm watching them all. And I just illegally downloaded all the movies because Disney Plus wasn't a thing, and I was a broke college kid at the time. So just sat down in front of my computer and just watched all 6 in like 2 or 3 days. So I remember that pretty vividly, and I remember being blown away by it, but certainly didn't watch it any time near when it came out or had a cool re-release or anything like that.
I think I had to have watched them right when the re-release came out, but I didn't watch it in theaters. I watched it at my grandpa's on the VHS with my uncle who brought him over, and that was the first time I ever experienced any type of Star Wars, and I loved it. That was the first time that same uncle actually introduced me to Final Fantasy VII, which is also one of my favorite video games. So
good uncle. So it's funny you mentioned uncle and that, and he got you into movies. I had an uncle that like fit the mold. He was the movie guy. He was the uncle that had the double VHS tape that would rent movies from Blockbuster, and he would just copy them over and give them out to the family. So our whole at-home movie collection was because of my uncle Scott, and he was the movie guy. And he was the first one to get into DVDs and stuff like that too. So like I have that connection, but he just didn't get me into Star Wars. Another family member that failed me. My brother and uncle on the list.
So close.
This is the theme, John. Family members failing family members. This is Star Wars to a T.
Wow.
He was introducing you to it. You just didn't know it.
Am I the chosen one?
Oh my gosh. I knew we were friends for a reason. John and I are a dyad somehow.
Oh
no. So in what we've done in MCU Reviewed, we're going to pull over here as well. We like to watch the original trailer for the film together. So John cues this up so you can watch it if you're watching at youtube.com/thegeekiverse. If you're listening on the podcast, you just got to hang out for a minute or two.
You'll hear it.
But you'll hear it, so you can kind of surmise from there. But this is fun. Like, we've got one from 1976 remastered or restored, I should say.
Yeah.
And I've not seen this. At least I don't think I have.
I was doing a little digging. There's 2 that I found. One that came off of like an early VHS tape that people say is one of the first Star Wars trailers. But then this one is like a project where these people have been like restoring this and finding the original one that like aired in theaters based on people's memories and stuff like that, and they've replaced like some of the like video recorded footage with actual scenes from the movie. So it is like basically a work of art, from what I understand. Like I haven't watched it yet, but the comments are like, "Oh my god, how did you guys restore this? How did you guys do this?" So I'm hoping it's fun. I'm hoping it's good.
It'll be good. It's got to be, or
cool.
It'll be interesting at least.
All right,
so John, I'm gonna pass it over to you.
All right, you guys got it ready to go?
Yep.
All right, go ahead and play.
Somewhere in space, this may all be happening right now. 20th Century Fox and George Lucas, the man who brought you American Graffiti, now bring you an adventure unlike anything on your planet. Star Wars.
Here they come. Coming in too fast!
The story of a boy, a girl, and a universe. It's a big, sprawling space saga of rebellion and romance. It's a spectacle, light years ahead of its time.
I am C-3PO, human cyborg relations, and this is my counterpart, R2-D2.
Hello. No sauces, no sauces!
It's an epic of heroes.
Good luck.
And villains. And aliens from 1,000 worlds. Star Wars, 1 billion years in the making, and it's coming to your galaxy this summer.
So first reaction, Man, I get so nostalgic about old ads to the point where I follow a TikTok account that is all like late 80s, early 90s commercials, and I find myself just watching these commercials like all the time. I'm so nostalgic. Like there's something about this guy's voice, and I'm like, yep, that is like an 80s commercial. That's, I mean, 70s at that point, but it's an old trailer.
Slow moving name of the movie, slowly coming into view.
Yep.
Yep.
It's
like,
old, but
it's time. It says right, like that's exactly I think how we've been describing this.
I mean, we're talking about it. It's what 43 years later, 44.
Crazy.
So
I mean, the trailer. I mean, I'm telling you right now, if I saw that trailer when I was a kid, I'd be hyped about it. I'm watching it as right now as a 30-year-old. I'm like, okay, I've seen Avengers Endgame, guys. I've seen some cool stuff. So that doesn't do it for me, but it's nostalgic for sure. And that's the
think
best I
about
can say
having
about it.
nothing whatsoever anywhere near that level of quality or intrigue. I think, it's easy for me to say now, but even like if you think of a competitor, and I'm going to go there. You have Star Trek, which just is not anywhere close to this level. The storytelling is different. It's fine, but like you talk about visuals and practical effects and even sound effects, like it's not there. It's just this was totally different. And I love also, by the way, before I pass it on here, that George Lucas is the guy who brought you American Graffiti.
I was laughing about that.
Nowadays, we're like, what? And I did see that movie when I was younger because I was like, oh, it's George Lucas. And it's like, yeah, okay, whatever.
Very different.
But kind of amazing, right? That was his thing first.
Yeah,
right?
you know what?
Wow, I enjoyed that.
What just hit me that stands out is that it doesn't have any of the music. It just has this generic like score for this trailer. So like, man, that didn't feel like Star Wars to me because it didn't have the music. And I rewatched this movie combined yesterday and today. I took a break and I watched two halves of it basically, and I just couldn't stop thinking about how this score is just so ahead of its time. Like the music in this, if nothing else stood up, which plenty of it does, the score you could just it's just to die for. You can watch this movie with your eyes closed and have a great time. But yeah, that trailer had none of it.
With this, talk about the score, even towards the end of New Hope, the part where he's flying and destroying the Death Star, like the music does that whole
100%
scene at the end. It's everything.
There's so much
crazy
of this movie that is like, yeah, this is old. This acting is interesting. The direction was like, okay, this is the 70s, but the music makes it.
When did Star Trek come out?
Star Trek lived in some way, shape, or form at least a solid 10 to 15 years before this. Like it was a TV show first.
That's the thing. That's the difference in the budget though, because it was a TV show.
Yeah, 1966.
Right. So
that's what I think of when I see the trailer. Like if I was, put myself back in 1977, thinking of what else is out there that has this kind of sci-fi. I mean, like, a lot of people I think harp on the fact that it's not the first movie in the series and there's a prequel. But I kind of love that because you're going into a developed universe. There's already stuff built. You don't have to worry about stuff being built. You're kind of going in. There's stuff already happening, but sometimes the world is going to wait around for you, and you're following Luke as he goes into the story that's already progressing. And I think that's kind of what I loved about it, is because a lot of people knock on that, but in my opinion, it kind of allows someone to come in and get that full heart of the story without needing too much build-up. I mean, same thing with the cantina you mentioned. You go into the cantina and there's already tons of different things going on. You don't have to build a lot of that up. And I kind of like that fact because, back then there wasn't a lot of other stuff going on. And I don't know if you released the prequels back then and started with that, I don't know if you would have gotten the same reaction.
So you touched on something that I love talking about, because it's worth noting that this was not called Episode 4 A New Hope when it came out. When this movie came out, it was just Star Wars. So there was no prequels in mind. Like, sure, George Lucas built the backstory and stuff like that. This movie just came out as Star Wars. So so that's a great... So from our perspective, we're going into it as Episode 4, and we know that there's 4, 5, and 6. And the people who were watching the 5 and 6 when they came out, when are we going to get 1, 2, and 3? So that certainly existed. But one of my favorite filters to watch this movie through is to see all of the lore that's been planted, and to just ask myself, like, what was that plan to be this? Like, so let me verbalize that a little. Most of it is, the answer is no, but some of it the answer is yes, right? But you think about like the fact that, was Darth Vader supposed to be Luke's father in this film? Nothing adds up. It doesn't make any sense. The most obvious stuff you can point at is the romantic connection between Luke and Leia. But even stuff like Obi-Wan, he was very certainly talking about a different person when he said that your father died in the Clone Wars, and I taught a young Jedi named Darth Vader. And when they first see each other for the first time, he calls him Darth as his first name, not as a surname, right? Like his name is Darth. He's not Darth Vader. Like there's Darth Plagueis, and like so. It's just so fun to see all that stuff. And in the Jedi in general, an old Wookiee religion. We've never heard it referred to as a religion again. That was like this was the idea.
Sorcery,
right?
Multiple times,
right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So like just to see these ideas that were planted, and to see how far they've come, and to just know that this probably wasn't the original idea, but just to see the way that like Lucas and other people have taken it and just built an insane universe with it. It's such a fun filter to watch the movie through.
Guys, there was so much writing on this for George Lucas. Like he went all in, and it really basically, signed away a lot to make sure that this happened, to make sure his vision happened. And the studio, as is famously out there, Fox had no faith in this franchise, or this movie, actually. It wasn't a franchise yet. And they had so little faith, they let George Lucas keep the merchandising rights to this, which is one of the biggest blunders ever, right? Because think about all the toys, all the re-releases, all the collectibles. There's nothing like Star Wars in terms of collectibles. It's just this crazy animal that just has evolved over time.
It's almost like George wrote half of the characters to be animals and stuffed animals.
He knew. He just had this foresight and bet on himself.
Yeah.
And boy, did it pay off quickly. And then
live lesson there for you, everyone, too. That's listening. Bet on yourself.
100%.
You had those rights.
That's such a funny point because you think about it. Like, what's the toyified thing in this movie? There's really nothing, but the rest of them have something. There's Ewoks and there's everything else has it. There's always something.
Disney's really guilty of that.
Yeah.
Like, my gosh, as much as we all love Grogu / Baby Yoda, like, that is the most marketable thing I've ever seen in my life. I'm wearing Baby Yoda sweatpants right now. Like, it's crazy. I
could probably grab four Grogus from this room right now.
Yeah.
And it's, 2-3 years old?
Yeah, it's so BB-8. Like, you go down the line, like, all these characters. And, Tim, a little bit just back to your point on how you kind of jump into the story without... Oh, very nice, John. Without having the... I guess the world building. I think they did it, but in a good way.
100%. I liked it. I like the fact that you kind of just go in and you don't have to you don't have to spend time on why is this happening. It's like, hey, here's, a minute of information about what's going on. Hop in. And then it's like you get the background of what's going on, and then it zooms in on Luke and his story. Because that's what this movie's about. It's about Luke fitting into this story. So in a way, it's not coming in the middle. It's just there's stuff going on before Luke is involved.
Right.
And I think that's kind of the point, that life, sometimes you're not involved in the whole thing. You just kind of come in in the middle. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. The movie asks the questions that are fun to think about. Like, imagine if this came out. Imagine if the three of us, or like, nerd culture existed back in, 77 the way it does now. Imagine walking out of a theater and just asking these questions. Like, what are the Jedi? Where's Darth Vader? Like all these questions that.
But what are the Clone Wars?
What are the Clone Wars?
A lot, I watched a lot of
granted.
I watched a lot of videos probably 3-4 years ago, when I rewatched the movie, and there's a lot of little things that he had done. Like one little thing when Luke finds out his place is destroyed, his family's whatever, everything's destroyed. Like they made a point that Luke doesn't get on his knees or cry or anything. He just kind of stands there and he looks like he's showing emotion. But it's up to the viewer to decide what kind of emotions he's feeling.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff throughout that movie that leaves it up to the viewer, and I think that's kind of synonymous with the whole thing in the sense that there's a lot of background that you see, and you kind of envision in your head, well, I wonder what's going on here. Like where a lot of what's going on is up to your imagination, and I feel like that's why it did so well when it came out, is because there's no world building, but in a sense, they left it up to a lot of imagination. So
I'm glad you brought up that scene with Luke and his family being burned and everything like that, and his emotion there, because this rewatch, a line hit me that has never hit me before, and it's related to that. So when they're leaving the cantina and Obi-Wan says, "You're gonna have to sell your speeder," Luke goes, "Oh well, I'm never coming back to this planet again." That has always just been a throwaway line for me in the past, but for some reason this time I'm like, huh. He's ready to start this adventure. His family just died. He's always wanted off world, but he's ready to go. That's that. I don't know why it hit me so hard this time. It just watching it, it seems like a throwaway line, but it holds some weight.
Isn't that interesting with Star Wars? No matter how many times you rewatch it, there's always something, maybe not something you didn't see before necessarily, but something that you see differently, like you just mentioned. And I think about what Tim said, or what John said, even with like, there were so many things that George Lucas just kind of threw here and they changed course without really being a conflict. Like George always wrote around it. So like Darth Vader was not intended to be Luke Skywalker's father in 1977. Obviously. Yeah. Oh yeah. Crazy.
His father?
Yeah. No way.
Spoiler.
So in 1979, as they're producing Empire Strikes Back, that changes. And I've got some tidbits about that, but I'm gonna save for our next episode. But like, even the Clone Wars or Darth Vader, or Obi-Wan talking about Darth Vader as an entity or a person, as opposed to Darth being like a title for a Sith Lord, like he wrote that in just so wonderfully, I think, where he changed it, but it wasn't like he just totally backtracked either. So like, I think there was a lot of interesting stuff there as we, kind of went in over time, but it's so good. And I want to also think about John Williams. You guys mentioned just how he's so is well known and legendary as he is. To me, he's a little underrated in terms of how integral he is to the Star Wars experience. He's the soundtrack. He's created the soundtrack. He's written themes, if you listen throughout A New Hope, that are used throughout the rest of the saga, the rest of the Skywalker saga, plus even elements of Rogue One and Solo, whether it's Leia's theme. We don't have the Imperial March in this, Darth Vader's theme, right? That's interesting. That didn't hit in A New Hope. But we've got Luke's theme, when they call it the Force theme, when he's looking out at the two suns and kind of gazing out into the distance. Even the little, I don't know if it was a flute, but it sounds like a flute at the beginning as the crawl goes by, and we zoom down to the planet right where the Star Destroyer is chasing the Rebel cruiser. Like, that is a callback because that plays later on in The Last Jedi. Like, there's so much of it that you can just tie and be like, when did that happen? And you can close your eyes and hear something from John Williams' score and know when it happened. And that is just truly unbelievable. So the storytelling in Star Wars is probably, as a whole, not just George Lucas writing, plus his various writers, plus John Williams' score, all of that added together is why, if you guys know, I always talk about in video games how story is so important to me. I think it all stems back to this. Like, this really shaped who I am as a geek and a pop culture guy.
Joe,
it's just unbelievable.
Have you seen the documentary? I don't know the exact name of it. It's a YouTube thing, or maybe it started somewhere else, but it's about how Star Wars was saved in the edit room.
Mm-mm.
It is. I have to find it, and if anybody has,
I think I might have saw that.
It's super. You know what? Some of the things you said made me think that you'd seen it before.
How like a lot of like when they were done, he went back and like little things. Like I read a part like Chewbacca, like I forget what part it was, but left and they'd edited him so he wasn't leaving or some weird stuff like that they had done.
This was less about his weird decisions.
What reference.
There's a lot you can find out there about the weird stuff George Lucas has done in the edit room, and that pertains a lot to like the Phantom Menace, where like scenes that shouldn't exist because he was just so micromanaged. He's like, whatever footage we have, I'll make it work. Like that's different. Star Wars being saved in the edit room is a very interesting documentary about how much of a sort of a mess the production was, and how even on paper the script they had nobody was confident in. You talk about Fox not being confident. George Lucas wasn't even confident in it. When they had original drafts of this movie, watch this documentary and you'll see like. The movie was supposed to start with Luke. It was supposed to start on Tatooine, like a whole scene before the Jawas pull up and they're trading and everything like that. It was supposed to be a whole scene introducing Luke. Chewie was supposed to die. Not Chewie. I'm sorry. C-3PO was supposed to die. Obi-Wan was supposed to live, and like there's all these tidbits of these different people on the project who like made these suggestions, and how at the last minute these edits really changed the shape of the story. It's just so interesting to see how different the story would have been. So if you've seen this movie, which I imagine almost everybody watching this has, definitely check out that documentary.
If you haven't watched the movie, you should watch the series. It's a great trilogy.
Thank you, Tim.
Jury's still out. Jury's still out. We got to rank them first. We'll see.
Words of wisdom there. So we're kind of talking about impressions on the film here is one of our bullet points here. How many times do you think you guys have seen this movie? Can you put a number on it?
I probably can.
Yeah?
I would say maybe 15 times.
You know, I'm probably with you. I'm probably there, especially given my backstory and the way, like, you know, I really started diving into Star Wars and, you know, watching the films and getting into it around the Disney era. That seems about right. Like, so I was telling Josiah, we've been talking about doing this Star Wars reviewed for a while, but every time the holiday season rolls around, I always just get into the Star Wars mood. I want to be engrossed in Star Wars. I want to watch Star Wars. But we've been talking about this since the summer. So I'm like, I don't want to watch. I want to keep my rewatches fresh for when we finally do Star Wars reviewed. So I'm like, I can't just go through it. I'm like, you know what? The first movie is going to be A New Hope. I can just watch that a few times. And I think in the last few months, I probably have watched A New Hope like 4 times. And when I say watched, I watched it a few times for sure. But I also have just been throwing it on in the background because I just want Star Wars in the house. So that is definitely added to my total.
I think I've had 15 like sit down, watch the movie, opposed to like I've watched like a half hour, get busy, stop watching, like stuff like that. Maybe it's on TV, I'll pop it on, I'll watch the last 45 minutes. Like I don't consider that like a watch.
For sure. The original trilogy is my Christmas present wrapping background noise always. I don't know why. I'll just find one of those 3, I'll just play it. Sometimes I'll just pause it and just scroll to the middle just so something, you know, it's not going from the beginning. I'm just always watching that the original trilogy when I'm wrapping presents. Something about the holiday spirit got me feeling like Star Wars.
Can't go wrong.
It's the most wonderful time of the year, so you might as well watch the most wonderful movie ever. Basically, is how it goes. I would be surprised if I've seen this movie less than 50 times. 50. It's just like it's been so many times throughout the years. When I was a kid, I watched this to death. And then as we've done with MCU, I feel like a lot of times I've done rewatches leading up to the newest Marvel movie. And I definitely do this every year, especially when Disney had those Christmas releases for the first 3 years with Force Awakens, Rogue One, Last Jedi, and then even 2 years later with Rise of Skywalker. I always watch these again. So yeah, I would be surprised if it was less than that.
I think we should watch the last movie all in person.
That's a great idea. And that's very doable. Damn. That's very doable too. We've talked about like doing like, you know, in-person content, and that gets logistically, you know, troublesome. But like, this is easy. It's just watching a movie.
Set a time, come over a little earlier, we watch it, and then we immediately do it
that
live.
Would be nuts.
Tim, that would be your first time.
It would be my first time watching the movie.
Yeah, and you haven't watched Endgame either, right? All right, so we're doing both of those for sure.
Well, yeah, I'm getting close. I'm getting there. I'm just finished Civil War. I'm well on the path of grinding through that. I've watched a lot of movies in a very short. I think I watched 3 Marvel movies in one day.
He's gonna catch up for sure. We'll get you on MCU reviewed.
Like I said, Shang-Chi got me back in, like, got me hooked again.
Awesome,
dude. So. When we were walking into Eternals, I'm pretty sure that's when John was like, Josiah, I did something bad. I think that was paraphrasing.
It was Eternals. It was.
I think that's what you said, and we were like, I'm like, oh no. And he's like, I watched Star Wars. I can't help it. And I was like, dude, how am I supposed to help it then? I'm having a hard enough time.
Yep.
But here we are.
Just the first one.
In the MCU reviewed, we do something called favorite non-title character. So if we just watched Iron Man 1, 2, or 3, we got to talk about our favorite character that is not Tony Stark. So guys, who's your favorite character not named Star Wars?
Ooh, got plenty to choose from.
Who do we got?
I'm going to start it off just because I want to make sure I land this one. For me, it's Leia. It's Carrie Fisher. That she of the core cast, her performance to me holds up the best. I think that she is the best actor in this film. Harrison Ford being a close second, but I think Carrie Fisher is the best actor in this film. Weird that sometimes she's putting on a British accent. I think that's more so direction from George Lucas than, you know, her acting performance. But every time she's on screen, she just steals the show. I think about the scene where Tarkin's blowing up her home planet. It's just her performance there is just that's what sold me on her as a character throughout the first time I saw that movie, and every time I see it since then, it's like, man, this girl can act, and I've never been proven wrong.
So Carrie Fisher was 19 when this movie recorded, and fun fact, Daisy Ridley was 19 when Force Awakens dropped. For Carrie Fisher, her favorite line of dialogue was the dialogue about Tarkin holding Vader's leash. She said, John, that's a great pick. And the British accent thing, kind of where it's a little on the border. I feel like the direction there was that she's supposed to be like a politician, so to speak. whether
know,
that's right or wrong, to like be proper.
I always thought it was. I totally understand that, and I can agree with that too. And who knows? But to me, it always felt like her direction was to be Shakespearean about it, like be grandiose about.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Both of those kind of go hand in hand in terms of like the character being grandiose and being very official, and like her performance of this script. I don't know. That's I always get like the Shakespeare vibe when she pulls out that accent for some reason.
You're right, for sure. Tim, who do we
Who
got?
do you think mine is? Can we get a guess?
Hang on.
Very cliche.
Luke?
It's got to be Luke.
Luke.
Just the nostalgia of it, because when you're growing up, everyone wants to be a Jedi, and that was like the first time you got to see like the origin story of someone becoming one, and it was like, just in my mind, just awesome to see him slowly progress and learn. That's why I like the next movie so much, is just because it's really another development story, and I just can't not pick him because there's just so much behind that, and I just think it's the first introduction of that, and it's just awesome. I just, I really can. He broke BB-8.
His Kappa was detained.
We just witnessed a murder.
Oh no!
So, but if I had to pick a second and a third, it'd be RTD2 and CP3O. I think they're the comedic.
Yo, I hate
relief they bring
C-3PO in this movie so much.
I love it. I just feel like it's so dry sometimes, and it's just a good little spin on it. But
hate
Luke's for me for sure. I
Hate
just
in the
can't
way
not.
that I'm enjoying the movie and like I understand his comedic timing and stuff like that. But man, C-3PO, grow up, dude. Get out of here.
See,
Yeah,
I like C3. I like C-3PO in this movie. Where he pisses me off is Empire Strikes Back, but that's by design, right? Like he's supposed to be that guy.
Yeah.
All right, good pick, Tim. Neither of you picked my guy, which is great. I was going with Alec Guinness as Obi-Wan Kenobi. Our only
Ben Kenobi, you mean?
Ben Kenobi, yes. You mean old Obi-Wan Kenobi? Yeah, Alec Guinness, man, legendary actor, and the more time goes on, the more I appreciate his presence there and how well I think Ewan McGregor did to emulate what I think would be a young Alec Guinness, or a young Obi-Wan Kenobi, I should say. And it's a good overall performance. He was probably one of the biggest names coming into this movie from an acting standpoint, because Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford, relative unknowns. Harrison Ford with a little bit more of a history. But then I think about guys like Peter Cushing, who's Grand Moff Tarkin. He had a nice run in Hollywood as well. And I always line back on Alec Guinness as Obi-Wan Kenobi. So
One of the weirdest death scenes I've ever seen in my life.
Another thing.
Every time I see it, I'm like, what?
Another thing that caught me this time that I never noticed or thought about is after that death scene, Vader goes and steps on his robe. I've never really noticed that before. He just kind of
walks over him.
Gives a little zhuzh with the right foot, like, bro, what's going on, man?
I'm like, where'd you go?
I didn't mean it.
So funny. I actually were texting after I watched the movie. One of my buddies was like, "Oh, they have that whole scene remade," and I was like, "What? I had never seen it before." Awesome. It was. I mean, this death scene still sucks, but it was awesome.
Yeah, it's very.
It's really
very
cool.
It's so awesome to intriguing to think about what that fight would look like, knowing what we know about Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan from the prequel trilogy and the Clone Wars with like modern CGI, what that would look like. I destroyed this BB-8 Lego. I dropped it.
Oh, man.
I saw that. It was quick. I always think about that scene. Like, I know obviously this is the first lightsaber duel, right? So you got Darth Vader, it's tough to move around in that suit if you're David Prowse. It's an older Alec Guinness. I mean, in the term of Star Wars lore, this is only 20 years after Revenge of the Sith. So like it's a stretch to think that they aged that much. Like, you could make arguments for Darth Vader, right? He went through hell, but Obi-Wan Kenobi's really should be like in his 50s, really, at this point. He does not look like it. So there's a little gray area for sure.
It is, and that's one of those things where you can tell they changed what. And it's not even bad acting or old people or anything like that. Like they changed what the nuance of a lightsaber battle should be. Like George Lucas talked about the inspiration for it was like slow, methodical, almost like fencing fights, where it was like the direction they were given was to never take two hands off the lightsaber. Which, think about how awkward that is to do something cool when you can't take a hand off the lightsaber, right? So it just changed a lot. Yeah, exactly. You got Obi-Wan just like spinning and take off, and that thing can pull him
I just
off.
remember when I first saw that scene and he died, I was like, oh, he's not actually dead. Like, he just disappeared. But he actually was dead. So, but that was my first thought when I saw it. I'm like, oh, like he'll show up later on.
Right,
Then it was like he's actually dead talking to Luke, and I'm like, oh.
But there's even
That's
like
different.
there's even a line there that kind of paths out what we will eventually get with Force Ghosts. That's like,
Right.
you strike me down and I'll become back even stronger. And you
Yep.
know, he strikes me down and dude just bounces out.
That's the thing, you know, like, well, Anakin / Darth Vader probably wouldn't have known that at that point, right?
Right.
I mean, like, because you think about like him stepping on the robe and being like, "Hey, where'd he go?" so to speak.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm trying to think,
But
yeah,
he has experience with Force Ghosts, though. I don't know if he's ever seen somebody, you know, a Jedi, like die and become one with the Force like that. But doesn't he have experience with Force Ghosts from Clone Wars?
maybe he's got premonitions and
Qui-Gon.
voices, right? He hears Qui-Gon when he's, and even in Attack of the Clones when
yeah.
he's destroying the Sand People, right?
Right.
He hears that. Yeah, I don't know. Just
But again, it's tough. It's impossible to nitpick that because we know the context of these movies.
Yeah.
These movies are
Right.
you know, we're talking 20 years apart from when this original trilogy came out, and you know that's 20 years of backstory and writing George Lucas had to like, all right, let's make this stuff cooler. Certainly wasn't planned out that well.
so there's
when I saw it for the first time, I was like, "What?" So
Yeah.
there's
confused.
throughout the series, like it's going to be fun to try to poke holes in some of this stuff. I think, especially as we get to the prequels, I'm going to be like, actually, this is why we're here. So there's going to be a lot of that. In terms of that moment, if you will, we're going to talk about what was that moment, whether it was a quote, a sequence from the film, a scene, an interaction. Is there anything that just like gets you that is like, oh my gosh, I'll never forget that? Or is it maybe, hey, I thought that was pretty cool? That's kind of where we're going with this. I've got one in my head. John, it looks like you're ready to go. Why don't you share with us?
Yeah, we talked about it already a little bit. The moment on Tatooine when Luke steps out and looks at the twin suns, and that score from Mr. Williams just kicks in. That is just you say the word Star Wars, and that's what pops into my head. Luke standing, the Dooney background, the awesome double sunset. That music that's what I think about every time. So every time I watch that movie, I just can't wait to get to that. And it's artful. It's a masterpiece to just sit there and watch the direction, the soundtrack, and even the performance. Like it's not much, but it's really well done.
Iconic, and it's how they kind of bookend the franchise too, which is great. Tim, is there anything that kind of sticks out for you or just never forget?
I thought about this a lot. I don't know if there's one particular scene that really does it for me. I mean, I just love, like I said, love watching the whole movie, and there's not anything in particular, but one thing that always kind of sticks in my head is when you first kind of meet Darth Vader, and it's at the council, and I feel like no one at that point wants to rely on him. That's why they have the Death Star, and they're trying to use that opposed to relying on Darth Vader, and he kind of steps in and kind of lets them know, like, hey, I'm the boss, by choking the guy out when he talks back. And that always sticks in my head a little because I feel like that sets the mood that he's a badass. Like, he'll do what he needs to do to get it done. And I think that was kind of a good introduction to me of creating a villain that was kind of, you know, someone that you'd actually should be afraid of. So,
Tim, that's interesting that you say that. Like, there's so many things in that sequence where it's like, who's really the guy in charge, right? Is it Vader? Right. Is it Tarkin? Because he listens to Tarkin. Mm-hmm. They talk about the Imperial Senate in there. It's like, what? We never hear about that again. Right. We talk about the Old Republic, just seeds of that. And I mean, my gosh, there's so many things obviously that introduced. Everything comes back to this movie. Right. But most ironic of all is that's the exact moment that I have listed for my moment of the movie. It's when Vader chokes the commander and says, I find your lack of faith disturbing. Yep. Because that is the moment, obviously, that solidifies, I think, Vader's intimidating presence. If it wasn't early in the movie when he's choking the rebel and then just tosses him and breaks his windpipe, like,
right,
this guy's a monster. So there's that, and then what I love really though about Vader is not only that, but he's got that little bit of a cocky sense of humor that Anakin had. Just that, you know, he's trying to be kind of a smartass, and it shows its head in Empire Strikes Back when he's messing with Luke on Cloud City. It shows its head back in Rogue One when he's got some of the puns there. Just like, I like that about Vader. Like, he's just the slightest bit self-aware.
Right. That really, they do a great job reflecting that in Anakin's character for sure.
Not that there's not a well-known quote in there at all either. I mean, that's that's a. Yeah. No, couldn't be that either.
Joe, did you read the A New Hope from a certain point of view? Did you read that book?
Yes.
I love
It was so good.
It's awesome in general. Again, a huge recommendation if you're not into reading, get into reading because Star Wars literature is awesome. It's really good. So basically, it is it was on the 30th anniversary, right? 30th or 40th anniversary?
40th. So
40th.
Just a few years ago.
Right. So they're doing it for the original trilogy. Each book is it's basically just these mini stories, but every story is in chronological order of the film. Each scene from a different point of view. So that scene is from the point of view of the guy that gets choked, and it starts a little bit beforehand, and like he's in his head thinking about like his family and like his ranks within the Imperial Senate, the Empire, stuff like that. So there's just so much of that. My favorite one is from Empire, so I can't wait to talk about some of those like crazy stories that are in that book from Empire. But it's a really good
just talking
read.
about the books not too long ago. I'm gonna start doing the audiobook. I love reading, but we do dadcasts, as everyone knows that time's a little tough sometimes. So that's on my list. I do a lot of audiobooks. So I'm about to finish one. I have like an hour and 30 minutes left, and then I'm going to dive into the books that John recommends.
There's a lot of good Star Wars books, man. It's awesome.
Both, prior to Disney and then after, really. So the old canon and the new canon, if you will. I've not read The Empire Strikes Back from a certain point of view yet, but the A New Hope one just is mind-blowingly good. There's so much there that really these novels do such a good job of enhancing the movie. And I think Star Wars usually does a good job of saying, hey, you don't want to watch anything else. That's totally fine. You watch these movies, you can understand what's going on. But if you're a super fan, you want to really get into the nitty gritty, pick up novels, whether it's stories in between movies or like John's reading the High Republic series, or you go way after what's going on. And there's so much you can kind of fill in the blanks. Yeah, John's doing good there.
We're getting there.
What I kind of want to do is so on MCU Reviewed, I run through just notes and observations from the movie. I limited myself just a little bit here, but I think it's Star Wars, so we're going to be talking for a while. Let's be honest here.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I just jot down bullet points throughout. We'll call these Joe's notes. We'll go with that.
Before you get into that, does anybody know if you can look up like the schematics for Lego sets? Because I definitely threw out the instructions to this BB-8, and I've got no clue how to get it back together. How did I do? I don't know. I got nothing. So can I just Google? Anybody know that? Can I just Google BB-8? I would assume so, but
there's a guy that's good at fixing things. His name's Anakin Skywalker. Why don't you call him up?
He's all sorts of dead. Oh, spoiled the movie.
Building instructions for 757.
Yeah, go ahead and give me link me up on that.
BB-8 Lego Star Wars.
Perfect. Thank you.
5,000.
Well, there you go.
You can
put that baby together.
You can continue the show here.
So right off the get-go, I always love this. It's iconic, and it's really not a part of the movie. And it didn't hit me until Force Awakens came out, which was then owned by Disney. The 20th Century Fox logo with the snare drum and the epic beginning. I was really hoping they'd bring that back for Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker. This is not a spoiler, Tim, but they did not, because Disney purchased 20th Century Fox that year, and I thought, what a cool callback that would be just to throw that in there. Anyway, I missed that. This is a weird fact, but there's no credits for the movie at the beginning. And if you ever watch an old movie, you see the credits usually play before and sometimes after.
Such an interesting point. I even as far back as 2002, as I referenced before, Spider-Man. Man, I watched that movie like a week ago. I'm like, dude, I forgot about credits before movies. This is brutal. Very interesting point.
So what makes this even more interesting, and I can't recall if it was one of the Hollywood guilds. It was a requirement that you played this, depending on which studio you worked with, that you had the credits roll before a movie so that people could see them, right? Think about it. How many times post or prior to MCU did you leave as soon as the credits started rolling? What a brilliant way to bring that back, by the way, by always just, playing the extra scenes. But George Lucas was fined for this because he basically said, no, I'm doing this my way with my vision. So he just hit Star Wars, he hit the crawl, and the movie started without any credits. Interesting. And that kind of changed things moving forward. And that rule changed. I'm not sure how long after, but people stopped getting fined for it. Kind of interesting. We know it was only called Star Wars at first, but do you guys know when it started to become Star Wars A New Hope?
2017.
1981. So only a few years later, they changed it just before Empire Strikes Back came out. They did a little bit of a re-release and changed it to episode 4, which I can imagine people were like, what's going on here? But he did. We'll talk about it in more than a few episodes away. But the first paragraph of A New Hope, if you don't know, is really where the idea for Rogue One came about. John Knoll, who is one of the special effects supervisors on the prequel trilogy and then the Disney sequel trilogy, said, hey, what if we did a movie that was really this? Which ended up becoming Rogue One, where the rebels steal the plans to the Death Star. We talked about this a lot, that this is visually beautiful more than 40 years later, even probably without some of the touch-ups, and that we really can tell where the special edition effects were. I think the worst one, like the most egregious one, is actually Jabba the Hutt. That's bad. Not even just from a CG aspect in general. Yes, it's terrible. Just the inclusion of that scene is just not necessary. It makes sense. I shouldn't say that, but it's just not necessary. You just had all that dialogue there with Greedo, and to me, it kind of takes away from the reveal from Empire of who Jabba the Hutt is when the CGI did get, they did it the right way then. It's just such a weird scene. It doesn't fit. They just had that same exact exchange with Han and Greedo a little while ago. So bizarre. It's not good. What's funny too is Boba Fett was not originally in that. Right. So they added the scene, no Boba Fett, and then for one of the special editions or re-releases, they added it. It's too much. We didn't need that. Boba Fett just entering an Empire Strikes Back was cool enough. Yeah. And I don't know if. I don't know how you don't catch this, I guess. But when Han steps on Jabba's tail, it's so bad. Awful. It's terrible. Yeah. He goes out. Like, how could you have put that in? Like, how could you? And this wasn't. They didn't do this in the mid '80s. They did this in what, '97 or whatever. Whenever they re-released this, like probably the 2000s. I've got to go back and look. I swear they did for like the special edition in '97 a way better rendition of this. Like, not nearly as egregious and ugly, because I remember Han stepping on the tail, all that stuff, and then just like it was like, okay, it's whatever. I want to say maybe when the DVDs came out in the early 2000s, that's when he went back and like touched up Jabba, and Boba Fett was added, and it was like, what are we doing here? Like, weird, just bizarre, because it totally takes you out of it. That's another example of something that was just not planned to be that way, because you can watch the original scene without the CGI. You can see on YouTube, probably a deleted scene on some DVD or VHS or something like that. You can see Han and the actor that was standing in, or probably was cast to play Jabba the Hutt at the time, having that conversation. It's just a normal dude, and when Han walks away, he says, like, you're an incredible human being, or whatever he says to him. Like, he specifically says that, and now we can use that context to think, oh, Han was just making a joke because he's a big blob. Right. Like, no, he probably was very literal in that line when it was written. Yeah, it's just bizarre to me. There's a lot of examples of that, but that's the worst one to me. So in The Mandalorian season 2, the first episode of that is all about them taking down the crate dragon. If you recall, that huge beast. In the desert in Tatooine, the skeleton that you see C-3PO walk by is a crate dragon. Now, to me, that's a much smaller dragon than the one we saw in Mandalorian. Just kind of interesting. It's a baby. Yeah, I hope
I've not seen The Mandalorian, by the way.
Oh, man.
Damn. On my list.
You don't even have to wait until we get through this.
I know.
Go watch it. Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, I've been meaning to watch it, so.
I've rewatched
that. I'm so weird. It's like, I just like have been like, oh, I just want to start rewatching them, and I have like this weird thing about
doing it all,
not rewatching the movies before I go into it. It's just, that delays everything, and that's the problem, so.
It's okay, Tim. When the Mando came out in 2019, I was not in your life yet, so I forgive you. But now we've got to figure this out.
Honestly, it's your fault. You should have been in my life then to force me to watch it. So
I tried.
At the end of the day, I don't have to tell you.
Don't you worry. I'll get you there. I'm going to Force Awakens. When Rey has her moment, when she touches the Skywalker lightsaber and she hears all these Jedi's voices, you hear Obi-Wan Kenobi say Rey. I don't know if you guys know this is a thing. Ewan McGregor recorded that line for that, but they also stole a little bit of dialogue from Alec Guinness in A New Hope to match those up, so that Ewan McGregor, the new Obi-Wan, and Alec, the old Obi-Wan, they say Rey. So Alec Guinness never said Rey. But what he did say in A New Hope is, "Don't be afraid." So they stole that little syllable out there, and they basically merged it with Ewan McGregor. I thought that was really nice. Just I love
cool.
Oh yeah,
I love that stuff. Just awesome. Luke famously was not Luke Skywalker originally. He was Luke Starkiller. The Adventures of Luke Starkiller, which Starkiller has just gone on to be so many things in Star Wars, including in the current canon, Starkiller Base. And then, of course, we got the video games, The Force Unleashed, where we had the clone apprentice, right? We had Starkiller. So that has kind of lived on in different forms, which is always a nice nod. John, funny that you mentioned from a certain point of view. I just jotted this down last night because I was thinking about it. In the sequence in the Sandcrawler when Owen Lars is buying the droids. So he's buying C-3PO from the Jawas, and he tries to buy the red droid named R5-D4. In Star Wars, a certain point of view, it's determined that R2 basically on the Sandcrawler talks R5 into blowing that gasket so that R2 could stay with C-3PO. Kind of a funny little bit of lore there to go back and think about.
Very cool.
Because you're like, oh, just something happened. It was random, right? Of course, that's how it was intended. But when you get to write these books all these years later on, you write it into canon. It's kind of fun to think about. We already talked about this, that Vader was not originally going to be Luke's father. So the line still makes sense. When Aunt Beru says he's got too much of his father in him, Owen Lars says, "That's what I'm afraid of." Funny that he was actually referring to a different guy altogether, but now it really makes sense, right? For a lot of reasons. I already mentioned my moment. Funny that Obi-Wan Kenobi also mentions as they're finding that the Jawas were just destroyed by the stormtroopers. He says, "Only Imperial stormtroopers are so precise."
Wow, how well that line is aged.
That's one of the rare moments of Obi-Wan wisdom that I'm like, okay, this guy was old and batshit crazy.
Right. Or maybe he was joking. Maybe it was sarcasm. That's what that's my new canon. It was sarcasm.
Yeah.
If it was Han Solo, I'd say, yeah, you're right. But now I'm saying, get out of here. That's ridiculous.
Clone Wars, Obi-Wan would have made that line,
Hello there. Yeah, you're right. Flash forward. This is not spoilery, but Book of Boba Fett, Episode 1. The Cantina band that you see there is playing a variation of the original Cantina song from A New Hope. So that's kind of interesting. Go check that out. It's more like a slow, mellow version of that.
What's the blue guy called? What's his name? Come on, Joe. Just do a softball to flex your knowledge.
I can't believe I don't have it written down here.
Ebo. I can't think of it. Whatever. My point that I was making is, did you know that those are his feet?
Max Rebo.
I was there. I had 80% of the syllables. Those are his feet that he's using. You ever see the anatomy of that creature? Don't Google it. It's terrifying.
I gotta Google it.
Don't do it.
Why would you say that?
Yeah, it's terrifying.
John, have you ever, I guess Tim too, but I feel like this is more towards John. Have you ever cared about who shot first?
Just morbidly curious as to why it got edited and changed so many times.
Yeah, I agree.
That's it. I certainly don't care in terms of like, oh, I wish it was Han, I wish it was Greedo. Don't care that way. Just so weird that Lucas cared so much. It's
weird, and why would Greedo miss from that short of a range, right? Like, just not good there in terms of logic. And I think if you go with, I think if you go with the original, like that's probably the best option because it was like, oh, don't mess with Han Solo. Like, he will take you out. And I think George Lucas's idea or mindset was he didn't want Han to appear like a cold-blooded killer. He wanted him to be like, he was just acting in self-defense. But they shot at the same time.
But it almost does play
which
that way
version did you guys watch?
So we probably both recently watched just the Disney Plus version, or
I think I watched where the original. I don't think I watched the Disney Plus. I didn't watch the Disney Plus version.
The original, Greedo doesn't shoot at all. Only Han shoots. There's only one shot.
I'm gonna look right now. See what I watched.
But it almost plays like the way that George wants it to play nowadays, because Greedo's literally talking about killing him. He's over your dead body. That's the idea. Like the tension is built that Greedo was about to kill Han. So like it still feels like it's in self-defense, but it's just like, okay, Han is sly and he's one step ahead. I'm like, when I think about it and I see that original version, I don't feel like it's playing off as Han's a cold-blooded killer and he just took this guy out. Like,
Right.
I think the context and the writing was there, and it's just weird that it's been edited so many times. In the oh my god, the head switch when he, you know, that might be my worst CGI moment, making his head go this way to avoid the bullet. And then,
nothing can be worse than Java. I'm sorry, John. I see your point, but no.
I gotta pick a new one, okay?
All right, fair point. Speaking of Greedo, two more things here. I love the McClunky. So not in any of the previous editions prior to Disney Plus, I think. I feel like that was when McClunky became a thing. So if you don't know, Greedo says McClunky, and that is basically a big F off in the Star Wars universe. It's a swear word.
And to me, it's just like, that was fun because it was almost like Disney Plus, like, because Disney Plus launched with these Star Wars movies, and it was the first time we saw them in 4K, and it was like, awesome, we have this new Star Wars collection. Of course, so many people dive into these movies and watch A New Hope first. It was almost like a joke. It's like, you know what, we edited it one more time, but it's kind of fun.
Yeah, I like that one a lot, for sure. McClunky, just the way he says it is perfect. The other point on Greedo, so I'm jumping again. This is so George Lucas. He was supposed to be in the Phantom Menace as a kid when Anakin and the crew are on the streets in Mos Espa, and he was supposed to get into a scuffle with him because George thought it would be funny, not just to have Greedo there, but to be like, oh, it was him and Darth Vader. Wouldn't have minded it. You know, it didn't happen, but I think might have been a deleted scene. I can't recall.
I think him just being there is a deleted scene. I don't think the scuffle's there.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think you can see Greedo in a deleted scene.
So speaking of things I never noticed, John, you said you had never noticed, or at least felt like Luke's reaction or line when it came to never coming back to Tatooine. Chewie, the first time he enters the cockpit, I never noticed that he hits his head on the lucky dice that are hanging there.
Oh, yeah, I don't think I ever noticed that. Yeah.
So I never noticed, really, honestly, the lucky dice prior to them becoming a thing in Last Jedi. Like, they made it a thing where it was like, oh, these are important. This is Kylo Ren's dad's lucky dice kind of thing. And then they appeared throughout the movie. They were always there to New Hope. I just never picked up on it. But sure enough, last night I'm watching or whatever, and Chewie hits his head on him, and they kind of dangle. Of course, when Luke is training on the Millennium Falcon with the lightsaber, and Ben Kenobi's talking about the Force, and he's got the blast shield, all that stuff. Of course, it's really ironic that Han talks about his view on the Force and how it's this hokey religion and it's a bunch of little tricks and a blaster is no match for anything. And of course, his son becomes essentially the next Darth Vader. Right. What a nice callback in Force Awakens for him to be like, yep, it's real. It's totally real. He was made a believer out of all of it, right? This is probably a good bit of trivia, but Luke becomes the first person in the saga to say, I've got a bad feeling about this. I've got a bad feeling about this is in, I think, just about every Star Wars movie. Some character says it kind of as a nod. It's just this joke, right? That something bad is about to happen.
I got another one like that I picked up on today, and I don't know if it's a running theme or not, but right before Luke says, like a few minutes before Luke says that, when they first sit down and they're running from the Empire, Han says, this is where the fun begins. Did you realize that?
Huh.
Yeah. So I don't know if that was like a direct reference in whenever Anakin says it. Is that Revenge of the Sith, I think? It just I was watching and I heard that today, and I don't know if he said exactly the same line or he said like this is where the fun starts or something like that, but like it just felt very similar and almost like did I not realize that's a callback or a reference at all?
Dude, you're right. Yeah. I never noticed that.
Yeah. Interesting, right?
I didn't notice that either.
I love this. This is why this is why this show has to happen, everybody.
It's just funny from my perspective because that's like little things I don't really think of that often, because I haven't really rewatched them so many times,
right?
And try to nitpick them. You know what I mean? So
Timmy, I'm going to learn you some knowledge. Let me tell you here.
You gonna learn today?
Okay, I'd love this one so much. So Princess Leia is in block 2187 on the Death Star, and that is relevant because that is Finn's stormtrooper number in Force Awakens. He's FN 2187.
Sure is.
Love that. Love it. A lot of people, I think, or at least circles I've been a part of, have complained about the humor that we've seen in movies like Force Awakens and The Last Jedi in particular. And I think Star Wars has always had humor. Like they say, oh, it's Disney and they're trying to make it too much like Marvel. I don't think so. I think they've always had it. Case in point, I think we're kind of just numb to it because we've seen these movies so many times. But Leia's walking carpet comment is one of my favorite Star Wars lines ever. It's so good. And it's so like ahead of its time if we're thinking that it like, you know, Star Wars wasn't ever funny.
Right.
It absolutely was funny.
It's a really good quip. We should name a podcast after that.
Damn straight we should. One day. This one I also love is a little bit of lore. So have you guys seen where the stormtrooper hits his head on the Death Star as like a platoon is running by?
Yeah.
Do you remember, if we're going to Attack of the Clones, where Jango Fett hits his head while he's going up the steps or the ramp to the Slave One on Camino? In George Lucas's mind, when they did that in Episode 2, that was a joke to be like, hey, stormtroopers are a little bit clunky because Jango Fett was, even though stormtroopers necessarily aren't clones.
Yeah,
that's right. We've changed that.
Right. Well, a lot of them were. A lot of them were in the early. They were still, like early on in the Empire. They were using clones as stormtroopers, so they could pass.
It's fine. It's one of those gray areas where, like, even if they have double the or half the life cycle of a regular person, right? Because they age quickly.
Yeah.
It still is okay because it's only 20 years after that, so it could be an older one.
In the Charles Soule Vader comics, they go into how like there are still some clones that are stormtroopers and how they're like, you know, phasing out, and there's even like a little clique of recruited stormtroopers that are kind of like, you know, shit talking recruited stormtroopers that are shit talking the clone troopers. So that it's canon.
It works. It works. But I think that I like George Lucas's approach there to be like, hey, this was an actual blooper in A New Hope that we just didn't realize, and it made the final cut. And he's like, I'm going to write that in. Like, I love that stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
The lightsaber duel was fine, as we talked about earlier. It's not some of the crazy stuff we saw, like the samurai setting in the prequels. It's not some of the less experienced lightsaber fighters that we saw in the sequel trilogy, but it works. And honestly, it means all that much more to me, having seen what these guys went through in episodes 2 and episode 3, when we get to Mustafar, and seeing that this is kind of the rematch of that.
It is difficult for me to make that connection. It always has been. So James Earl Jones' voice as Vader, Alec Guinness's portrayal, which is great, and I think that him and Ewan McGregor have like a great trade-off in terms of the way they play that character. It's just always so difficult for me to feel that those are the same two characters, and that rivalry and that friendship and all of that carries through. That's just one of those things that's always going to be tough for me. I don't know why.
I can respect that. I will say, so we're allegedly going to get a remake or a rematch, so to speak.
I sure hope so. In Solo or in Obi-Wan?
Yeah. And I hope they write that correctly, so to speak, right, where it bridges the gap. And I think they will.
Yep.
I think they will too.
The Death Star to me is it was always intimidating, but it's so much more menacing after Rogue One, where the Death Star is kind of like the star of that movie. Like seeing it arrive into the atmosphere for Yavin, I have these flashbacks to seeing it arrive on Scarif now from Rogue One. And that makes it way more intimidating to me. I don't know if that changed for you guys, but
everything about the Death Star and the beginning of this movie is enhanced by Rogue One. I cannot wait till we get to Rogue One. I've only seen that movie twice. I
really liked Rogue One. I thought it was so good.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of those movies like we talked about during MCU. That's one of those where like every time I'm doing like a rewatch or something like that, or want to throw something on, I just always want to save that one to watch it at the right time. I'm like, I don't want to just throw on Rogue One as background noise or just like for the sake of watching. Like I want to be in the right mindset to watch this movie. So super excited to revisit that one.
Lots to unpack from that movie. In my review back in 2016 for that, I kind of titled it A New Hope Part 1. And honestly, it is that to me. And it made me enjoy A New Hope even more than I did previously. We've talked about that, where movies can make you enjoy past iterations even more.
Happens a lot in the MCU.
Right.
Exactly. Like Ragnarok made me a little bit care about the previous 2 Thor movies, where before I was like, I don't ever need to see these again.
Endgame and Dark World. That's like my favorite example.
Yes, I think that's a great example. Even without going into spoiler territory, with some of the Spider-Man stuff that we just got from No Way Home, like that has made, I think, a lot of people respect stuff in the past that they maybe didn't prior, or even to a different level. Just a few more points here. Dennis Lawson is the actor who plays Wedge Antilles, one of the starfighter pilots in the X-Wings on the attack on the Death Star. Dennis is the uncle of Ewan McGregor, who plays Obi-Wan Kenobi in the prequels. So Ewan grew up a Star Wars fan only because his uncle was in the movie and they went to see it.
Real quick, when the droids are being like cleaned up and stuff by Luke in his little cabin there, doesn't he say that they belong to Captain Antilles?
Oh, I don't know.
So R2 says that, like, I belong, my owner is Ben Kenobi, and then C-3PO goes like, our only previous owner seems to be on record as Captain Antilles. I'm pretty sure I caught that again, like, for the first time this time.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think that's a thing.
Looks like you got to rewatch it, Joe.
Wait, don't they mention that when they're with Luke for the first time on Tatooine?
That's what I said.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. I missed that. Yeah.
When they're in his room, like, he's cleaning them up, and like he says, like, our only last known owner was Captain Antilles.
Yes, you are correct. I misunderstood you.
Got it.
Yeah, because 3PO's got the mind wipe, right? But R2 didn't.
Yes.
Yeah. So R2 recollects all the stuff that happened all the way back to episodes 1, 2, and 3, and 3PO has no memory of it, which is sad a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And the last note I had, I actually think A New Hope is perfectly paced. Clocks in almost exactly at 2 hours. There's really no lulls to me, and everything that happens, at least that I remember, just moves the story forward. There's nothing where I'm like, okay, what are we doing here? Let's go. Let's get some action going. Even the quieter moments, it feels like it's building towards not just the finale of this movie, but the future of Star Wars.
Agree 100%.
I 100% agree.
100%.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of scenes in there where it's a lot of build up and it's going slower, but it's going slower for a reason. And then there's like just so much going on at once. You know what I mean? And I like that a lot. I think it makes you appreciate the parts that are a lot faster because of the build up. They're allowed to do that. So
I think a lot of people, detractors, if you will, with good reason to a degree, compare Force Awakens to this. I don't know that that's totally fair. We will get to that on that episode. But to me, they do in Force Awakens, they intro that movie so well with bringing in all the new characters before we get to Han and Leia and so on and so forth. And I think they do that in this movie too. You get C-3PO and R2 right off the bat. You get Vader right after. In between all that, you get Princess Leia. Not long after that, we meet Luke Skywalker. It's just one thing after another, and they introduce all these legendary characters in a way that's meaningful, and it's quick and concise without cutting corners.
No doubt. I agree for sure with all of that. What always surprises me when I rewatch this movie is, man, we don't see Luke Skywalker until like 15 minutes into the movie. We don't see Han Solo until almost 30 minutes into the movie. It's kind of weird to think about. Like, I think about A New Hope, I'm not thinking like, all right, we're on Tatooine right away. No, it's like 15 minutes in. It's crazy.
John, if you think that's crazy, wait until you see Force Awakens.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch that for the first time.
It's going to be great. I have an inkling that you're going to really, really enjoy that movie.
We'll see.
That's I had a lot of notes there, and I said I wouldn't, but I lied. I just couldn't help myself. Anything I'm missing? Anything you guys wanted to talk about that we didn't get to for Star Wars: A New Hope?
I had a few notes, and we naturally got through them all.
I think we covered a lot of stuff as we kind of all were talking and pieced everything in here and there. So, I think we covered everything I was thinking. So
awesome, John. I'm going to let you intro the final segment here. It's anticlimactic today but it'll get really good in the next few episodes. We rank these movies. Why don't you share with the audience how we do that if they're not familiar with the MCU Reviewed?
Yeah, so Star Wars Reviewed, we're doing the same thing as we did with MCU Reviewed. So we watch these movies and we rank them. So I'm going to pull up the image right now so you can kind of understand how it's going to work. Right now, of course, sitting at number 1 is A New Hope because we've only watched one movie. But
yeah, I didn't have any say in that.
You didn't have any say in that. You have no choice.
Hang it. Wait.
I'm waiting.
Oh,
John texted.
Yeah, okay. JT says this should be number 1.
Okay, got it. Perfect.
Okay,
as if he had a choice. So right now, of course, A New Hope that's at number 1. But next time we record this and we sit down and talk about Empire, we have to decide. We vote basically. So next time we record this, Empire is going to start at 2, and we have to vote to see if we agree that it's better than A New Hope. So obviously, when we get to film 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like once we get a good grouping of films here, it's going to get fun to see who votes these movies where and where they end up. So basically, it's like once the majority drops off. So right now it's 3 of us. 2 of us have to keep moving up. Once one falls off, that movie stays where it is. So that's the ranking as it sits. We've got a nice little image up here. We'll pull this up every time we get to it. But I have absolutely no clue where any of these movies are going to end up based on the crew that we have here. I think that Joe and I are like somewhat similar in a lot of ways, just like the MCU. But JT and Tim, so we haven't mentioned JT's got to be on this whenever he can. And our goal is to always have 3 people. That's the goal. If we can get 3 people available, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this show. But we love to have all 4 of us, so it's gonna be interesting.
Also at some point we're gonna have the man, the legend, Del Reed from 26 Shirts. He's gonna join us. He loves Star Wars. If you didn't know, everybody. But John, can I make a proposal? We haven't talked really about this in a while.
Yes.
So, on the MCU Reviewed, it gets controversial, and it gets controversial fast. We have something called snaps, like the Thanos snap, right? In Infinity War. If you haven't seen the movie, I'm not sorry.
You just ruined it.
I already said I'm sorry, so back off. Yeah, they're like... anyway,
there's a whole scene of just
a jazz
no
show.
fighting, just snapping.
The Avengers on one side, it's Thanos on the other, and they do that. It's beautiful. Snap off. Oh gosh. So in MCU Reviewed, each of us get 3 snaps. What does that allow us to do, John?
It allows you to attempt to switch the rankings of a film. So 2 films, I should say. So they have to be touching. So let's throw a hypothetical out here. So say we review Empire next week, and Empire, the majority doesn't vote up Empire to number 1. So our ranking is A New Hope 1, Empire 2. Say that's the way the week ends. If one of us feels so passionately that that's wrong, that we want this to be corrected, we can use one of our, what are we calling it, Joe?
I want to say, this is what I wanted to propose.
Okay.
Jedi mind trick.
Jedi mind trick.
I like it.
By proposal, you mean take the idea that I gave you over text message. Got it. So yeah, so yeah, you didn't even remember that?
You never saw the text.
Did you really think that was it? Did you really think that was your idea?
I really thought I came up with this. So hang on, real quick. So, good luck finding that. You're gonna have to go back to like
just
the
gotta
summer.
search.
I just have to type in Jedi mind trick. I have an iPhone. I don't have to scroll on my Android like you Neanderthal.
Yeah.
No, stop it. I'm sick of you guys making fun of me for having a Samsung. So, I know we talked about it. I don't remember what you called it, but in my head, I've been calling it Jedi mind trick. And I think I came up with it.
My text right here. I don't have the date. I can scroll up and get it. But what do we call the snap when we do Star Wars? The Jedi mind trick? ? Great question. I've got to think about it. This is Joe. Jedi mind trick might be it. Jedi mind trick.
He thought about it and decided that was his idea, and it was a great idea.
I thought about it, and I think we should call this. Hang on, bear with me.
It was. Go ahead.
John. I think we should call this Jedi mind trick. And it was my idea.
It was September 21st. Great question. I've got to think about it. Jedi mind trick might be it, is what Joe said on September 21st. You really,
John, can I see you off air for a second?
That is amazing.
How many are we gonna get? Are we just gonna do 1 because it's so many?
No,
that's 3.
Oh,
I think we should do 3.
I think 2.
I think 3 is too many.
I think 2. I think 2. I haven't even used one in MCU yet. We're 20 films in. I haven't even used one. I think 2 is probably good for 11 movies.
It's not enough that you stole my idea, but now you're taking my number down.
I have the read receipts.
I'm just gonna snap every movie or Jedi mind trick every movie.
No, hold on. There's more to it. There's more to it.
He's gonna JMT it.
So you use a snap in MCU or a Jedi mind trick, as Josiah likes to coin the term. You like that exactly? You don't just get. It doesn't automatically happen. You're proposing that change. Who decides? Y'all decide. The viewers, the people on Twitter. Even if you don't watch this, it's fine. You can participate because we put a poll up. So, in our theoretical situation here where we ranked Empire below New Hope, somebody uses their Jedi mind trick, a poll goes up. Which is the better movie? That's all the poll says. Which is the better movie? A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back. If the movie that the person wants to use their mind trick on wins the poll, it hops in the rankings. That's as simple as that. So it's not just you use it and you get it. You have to have some. You have got to have some good grounds. You have to think that you're right. And
you have
that
to
people
Jedi mind trick the voters.
100%. You absolutely, and you can campaign. You can retweet that. You can tag the most famous person that you know that agrees with your opinion. Go for it. Go for it. But as we've seen, JT try plenty of times with the MCU, doesn't always work.
Yeah. So like, JT, with all of his craziness, will probably end up with 3 somehow because of some sort
he got
stupid loophole.
He's had like 4 so far in the MCU. I don't know what's going on over there, but
it just keeps going. It's BS. And I'm salty about it.
And we're not talking busy sticks.
No, we're not. And, I think it's really just, I feel attacked because John Jedi mind tricked me into thinking it was my idea, only to pull the rug out from under me.
I can't get over the fact that you thought that was a unique idea.
Listen, so John and I have this problem. I say it's a problem where we just we think alike when it comes to how we like video games and a lot of our opinions on Star Wars and Marvel. So a lot of this is not going to shock you throughout the series here. Well, apparently we thought of the same thing, but
no, it wasn't we. It was John.
You stop right now. T2 over here. I can't believe that I thought it was my idea. And what's
so funny.
It's like a senior moment for you to be like, oh, let me think about it. Like it's
honestly, the fact that he looked up the text
again. This is the worst. He found the date even. This is just
I'm gonna edit that in here. I edit these videos. I'm putting the text in.
I can't this was a really great start for this series until the last few minutes. I'm just okay. All right. So now let me just gather my thoughts here. Just to recap, John, we have a New Hope at number 1 right now, right?
We do.
What if we started? I'm just thinking now, what if we started MCU reviewed with the Hulk? Would you just not have automatically put it 24th? Because I think it was 20. There were 24 movies at the time.
I guess we'll never know.
We'll never know. Okay, good enough, ladies and gentlemen. A controversial, if not exciting, first episode of Star Wars Reviewed. Lots of fun. Hope you enjoyed the ride as much as I did until the last 3 minutes. Whether you watched on youtube.com/the Geekiverse or listen on podcast services around the globe. John, I hope we can be friends after this. We've got an exciting...
I'm not offended. I'm just amused. That's amazing. That is so good.
I'm surprised.
It's so funny because it was such a legitimate proposal.
I know.
And then you're just like,
I'm like, wait, is this
I
a
told
bit?
you that.
Is this a bit? Like, are you trying to take my idea, and having fun with it? I'm done.
I would say you'll never know, but I think it's pretty clear that I thought it was my idea.
One last thing. We didn't show the shirt that I'm wearing.
Oh, what got here?
Galaxy. Oh, nice.
One Galaxy.
Geekiverse shirt.
That's the Geekiverse. Good stuff.
I like that, Tim.
Joe, where'd you get your shirt from?
Handcrafted. So my shirt, I've got Porgwins. It's a combo of the Porgs from Last Jedi plus the Pittsburgh Penguins from Fantastic, our friends over at 26shirts.com. They've raised over $1.3 million for families and charities in need, and it's unbelievable. Del Reed is the founder of that. We're going to have him on the show at some point here. Can't wait to check that episode out whenever that comes. John, where I was going before, where can you tease people on social media? But if people, I don't know, just like PlayStation or Nintendo or Xbox, what is a show that they should check out?
So we've got an awesome video game podcast. It's called Busy Sticks. We're shooting to do it weekly. We've been pretty pretty good about that. If there's nothing to talk about, of course we won't do it, but we're shooting for weekly. It's been a lot of fun. YouTube.com/the Geekiverse podcast services around the globe. Busy Sticks is fun, and we just introduced a new segment called Question of the Week, where one of our main topics we propose out to y'all, the people. We put that on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. So we're taking those answers, we're talking about them, we're interacting with the community, and it's been a lot of fun. If you like video games, watch Busy Sticks. It's pretty good.
Busy Sticks. What's great about that show is I came up with the name for that too. So I named that, and oh man, John is just, I've gone too far, folks. Yeah, no,
I can't take credit for that. I actually didn't even come up with that name. A friend of mine did.
Yeah, me.
No, it wasn't you.
It was Mr. Newton?
It was Mike. It was Tank Newton. Yeah, a friend of the show, Mike Newton. Catch him on
Apex legend, Mike Newton.
Twitch.tv/Tank Newton. Catch him. He's awesome. But he came up with that name.
That's John, awesome. The lighting when you were holding that at the camera was like perfect.
Super cool, right?
Like just it enhanced the right there.
So all episode, just do this.
Look at this. You know what's also yes. First, do that. Second of all, I just am realizing this. I have the least amount of facial hair of anyone on the show right now. Ooh. That's a weird thing for me.
That's weird.
Very interesting.
I don't even know how to feel. It's just drafty in here. Tim, where can we find you on Twitch, on social media, on any shows of consequence that you would?
Yeah, everything's
like to
Tim Tells right now. So that's the kind of the go-to, and obviously we have Dadcast. Going hopefully a little more consistently. I just got done with a move, had a little girl. It's been a little crazy. So, hopefully life's calming down a little bit. I'll have a little more free time. Hoping. I doubt it, but I'm hoping. So, but yeah, you find me on social media a lot. Big Sabers, Bills, video games, a lot of Marvel lately. So, all the good stuff.
Do you happen to post tutorials on how to fix broken Lego sets on your Twitter?
I might be able to.
All right, yeah, I could use a hookup for that.
Yeah.
So what's crazy too, the four of us in the Geekiverse, we got the three of us here plus JT. I moved about 14 months ago. I am soon going to be the longest tenured at my place.
That is super interesting.
That is crazy.
That's crazy.
Right.
Oh, like just absolutely bonkers.
What's going on here?
Lots going on. Plus, baby on the way for me in about a month or so. So we're gonna keep on chugging. It's nice. This iteration of the Geekiverse, because we've all got like life happening, so it makes sense for us to get where we need to go. I am at Josiah D. Leroy on Twitter. You can find me on Xbox and PlayStation at I am Brosiah. As John so politely mentioned, I'm a little bit harder to find on Nintendo Switch because everyone is. You need a friend code, damn it. But I am Brosiah over there. It might just be Brosiah. It doesn't matter. I like video games, so love talking Busy Sticks with John. That may be my favorite show that's going on currently at the Geekiverse that isn't Star Wars reviewed. This is going to take precedent, folks. Our next episode, The Empire Strikes Back, episode number 5. That was it was like a W.
What's a W?
Anyway, it's whatever, man. It's cool. So cannot wait to get to that. Stay tuned for that. If you want to get in the conversation, please do, especially as these rankings come out.
Star Wars is gonna get interesting, gonna get heated. Yep. Yeah. So follow us on Facebook and go to our Twitter, because we're gonna post these rankings at the end of every episode. We love fighting in the comments. We love it. It's my favorite thing to do.
I thought the MCU reviewed was tough with us not naming Winter Soldier near the top of the list. It's gonna get ugly when we get through some of these movies, and some of these movies are not where you want them to be. Just saying.
Ooh. God,
just saying.
I can't wait. Let's you know what? Let's double it up. Let's watch Empire. Let's do it right after this.
Right now, we're going
guys,
downstairs.
I'll cancel my stuff in the morning.
For John, for Tim, I'm Josiah. If you would excuse me, I'm so livid after just what happened here. I've got some slashing to do. Good night.